Hey guys, Matt Jones in Busan, in a small village, I guess you can call it, in Busan called Juachon, which is where the first Australians effectively settled here when they arrived after spending time in Seoul. So they came into Busan in 1889 in October, but then continue on by ship to Seoul to learn a bit more of the language and the culture, and then they walked pretty much from Seoul to Busan, getting here in 1890. 2 days before arriving, Joseph Henry Davies, he died of pneumonia and smallpox, and he's got a little headstone up in this church tower you can see there, which was established by him and subsequent missionaries. And just on the other side of that church is a small small school building, which was built in 1895, or established in 1895 as the first girls' school in Busan. It now operates in a place called Dongnae, which is north of here in Busan, maybe about 15 or so kilometers. And while the school still retains its own legacy to the founding of Australia, it's pretty much, wouldn't say necessarily distanced themselves, but largely forgotten its roots. And here we're standing outside of a memorial. You can see there it says the Reverend Mackenzie tablet, and here they're talking about these two guys here. James Mackenzie and his wife Mary Kelly. They met in Busan, married here, had 4 girls and one boy. The girls are all educated in Pyongyang. The boy died when he was a young child, in infancy. But 2 of the girls returned to Melbourne to study nursing and medicine respectively. And they later returned to Korea in at the end of 1591, I think, or in 1592, and they've set up a small hospital, which has become this quite large building here. So it's quite a significant legacy of the presence of some Australians, not necessarily Australia, but some Australians who played a role in Korea. And I mean, it's 26th of January. I was in Pohang earlier today, visiting POSCO, and it's. I just wanted to make a short postscript to a little post I put up yesterday about a guy called Squadron Leader Graham Strout, who was the first Australian casualty in the Korean War, and explain why it's relevant I come to this town. But firstly, let me just say that it's Australia Day. I mean, this was established by Australians, not by Australia, and I think that's important to recognise in the friendship. When people talk about the friendship between Australia and Korea, they're really talking about on a national level, not necessarily between individuals, although the two are inseparable. Being inseparable, it always staggers me as to why there is no presence of any Australian identity here. And that's not the role of the people here, that's the role of people, to my mind, up in Seoul, in the embassy. And I think more could be done to maybe have some greater presence, particularly in some days like Australia Day. This is a friend's cafe, a great place in Busan. I like coming here. She's been really kind and friendly to me. 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
She's there. But I just wanted to quickly come back to this story. Squadron Leader Graham Strout was in 77 Squadron. After they left Iwakuni in Japan, they set up briefly in Pohang, which is where I just came from. And then I'm reading. I read yesterday from a book by Odgers, who was the PR officer basically for 77 Squadron, and that book is this right here, and it's called across the parallel. and it gives an account of Strout's death. But then I was just flicking through this one here, which I've got, called Australia with Australians in Korea by Norman Bartlett. Ogden's book was 1952, this one is 1956. And I came to this really interesting story about Strout and the recovery of his body. I made a comment yesterday. I didn't know how his body ended up at the War Memorial because I saw his grave, but I don't know how he would have survived the crash because of the incineration of the plane. But this is a book by a guy called Edmund New, who was the chaplain to 77 Squadron, and he had experience in Korea in the 20s and 30s where he came across as an ordained priest. He worked probably right in this village, right here. He probably walked down this street where I've just been walking. And so in December, just before Christmas of 1950, there was a search put out for both the body of Strout and also for a guy called Harrop, who also crashed his plane around the Busan perimeter. So I'll get to Harrop later, not today, but this story is fascinating. Here's a guy who's basically a priest, a minister, church minister. You might think of a bit of a mousy character. But when he was here in Korea, he was regarded as with suspicion by the Japanese and was under constant watch, and eventually had to leave the country for his own safety, which he did in the late 30s. But in this book, he gives the account of how he teamed up with a sergeant called Tom Henderson, who was a veteran of search and rescue in New Guinea, Java and New Britain, and with Edmund's New's knowledge of Korea, they basically came across into Busan to try and get some information about how they might recover these bodies. I mean, that's just a ridiculous proposition. It was snowing. You might have seen the weather up in Gangneung, where I was yesterday. It would have been icy, almost ridiculously hard to get around. And so the governor of Korea, of Busan, who Eben knew from his time here as a minister, said that they could travel up the coast with a ship that was delivering explosives to a team of South Korean commandos. And so they basically got on this ship with a bunch of commandos, went up to the coast, got into Samcheok, where I was yesterday, only to be told, listen, this is not where your guy crashed. And they met. They were told, look, Samcheok's dangerous. When they came into the area, it says there was a good deal of shooting going on. I turned to Commander Poke, now commander of Mokho, and inquired about it. Oh, that, he replied. We shoot spies at the foot of the mountains. Poke had already investigated the crash of Strout's aircraft and informed us that it had taken place in Pohang, 8 kilometres west of Mokho, not Samcheok as we believed. As the commando's garrison was to withdraw from Mokho in a couple of days, there wasn't much time to carry out the search. Basically, they had the body of Strout. Strout was dead. The headman showed us the head tablet prepared to put on his grave when the UN forces finally mopped up that area. I read, to the memory of a brave United Nations airman. We recovered the body and returned to Mokho. So these two guys got out, walked around this icy area where there were a lot of North Korean sympathisers, some communist and North Korean soldiers who had been cut off. It was very dangerous at the time, and they basically snuck around. They found what they needed, got the body, and then got out. Subsequently, on the same trip, they also found Harrop's body and recovered that. Both bodies now are interred in the UN cemetery here in Busan. Fascinating stories, painted a completely different picture of what we understand Korea was like during the war. It must have been a really desperate place. But I think the point of this was that while I was at Samcheok station looking for something, it wasn't there. I wasn't going to find it. But the point that we still need to recognise something in Samcheok or in the area, maybe this place, Pohang. I think it's worthwhile exploring. It is a bit out there, but just like this street has no presence of Australia on Australia Day, and I know that earlier this year there was an Australia Day party in Seoul, and all the business leaders got together in a nice warm hotel and had a great party. I think there's more to be done in terms of Australia presenting itself to the face of Korea, and that's not all going to be done in Seoul. I think we've got to get our presence outside of Seoul into places where we have a real connection and show that we really care about our legacy here in Korea. Food for thought. I'm going to chase that up further. I'm looking forward to taking that conversation up and with the people who might be able to help. And if you're interested to hear more, I'd love to hear you too. Speak to you soon.